So hi, I'm Dr. Stefana Pecher, the country doc. Welcome to our latest edition of the New England Medical Cannabis Seminar and Support. We thank Mike from Press On Cafe for letting us use his space. And we have a very special guest here today, Ibn Hashim Bakari, a friend of mine. And he's also the owner of Harmless Health that propagates CBDs from hemp and similar products, and he's also a wonderful chef. So he's going to show us today how to make CBD infused honey and CBD infused chocolate. So yes. Welcome.
Well, thank you, and welcome everybody. Thank you for accepting me for being here, and been looking forward to doing this. Today, what I'm doing is I'm basically taking a spin off of something that I started probably 3 years ago, and that was making a chocolate with an infused honey with an infused cherry, and it was supposed to have been a Valentine's Day concept, but it never took off, so it went on the shelf. So now it's April and we're bringing it back, but I'm bringing it back with a different twist, and that is we're approaching allergy season, and a lot of folks don't know or realize that localized honey, and when I say localized honey, I'm talking about localized honey that is produced in your local area, because what you're ultimately doing is you're self-pollinating yourself with the infused honey to help you with your allergy symptoms. So with the theme of allergy season upon us, instead of it being miserable, why not have some fun with it with honey and chocolate?
That's brilliant, brilliant.
So today what I did is I actually ended up bringing down some organic cacao chocolate that I purchased in the Dominican Republic. I have some regular cherries that I actually cut up in half. I have some infused CBD honey, localized honey that which is Aquitnic honey, which is right here, which is a local in Rhode Island. And we also have some coconut oil that's also infused with CBD.
When you say local, you just mentioned Rhode Island. What's the area? Should it be like in your little part of Connecticut when you purchase it, or?
Well, the closer that you can get purchase honey that is from your region, the better, because obviously that's going to be the pollen and the different pollens that are going to cause you to have your allergies. When folks say, "Oh my God, the honey in Alaska is great," and I was like, "Yeah, but you don't live in Alaska, and Alaska pollen is going to be different than the pollen that's in the Northeast." So that's why I emphasize localized honey is the best way to go. So the closer that you can get it to home, the better. And then I also have here, the honey was basically infused with CBD isolate. CBD isolate is a powder form of the hemp product. We've gone from actually using the whole plant to extracting the oils, to the oils now being converted into the powder, because as I've found in the last 8 years with working with cannabis, that working with the direct plant, you're going to have a lot of earthy tones. You're going to have a lot more green to your product. Whereas with the oils are now a little bit more refined, a little bit more in color. But again, because it's an oil and water don't mix. So if you're going to try to infuse something that is a water base, you're going to see the separation of oil and water. So then that's where technology has taken us to the isolate, where we now go to a powder form, and that powder form is now water soluble. So it's able to dissolve and incorporate better. Looks just like flour.
It does.
I'm not sure if you guys can see that. Flash that to the camera. Yeah. And no, this is not cocaine, so it is CBD. So what I did is I started off with 2 cups of of organic chocolate, which I'm going to put in this double boiler. I'm going to melt this down. I will then incorporate a little bit of CBD coconut oil.
So did you infuse these oils with the CBD yourself?
Yes, I did.
So how did you do that?
I basically took a small saucepan and I added the honey, which was basically 1 pound or 16 ounces. And I basically just ended up whisking in. I measured out 1 gram of 1 gram of CBD isolate. That 1 gram of CBD isolate is equivalent to 1,000 milligrams of CBD. So now that we know that we're starting with 1,000 milligrams here, I kind of just simply just did a divide on the 32 chocolates that I have sitting in the freezer. It's kind of warm in here, so I wanted to keep them cool. And what essentially, simple math of doing the divide, 32 divided by 1,000, we're going to have 31 milligrams per chocolate. So you guys are actually going to end up leaving today with about 62 milligrams of CBD infused chocolate.
What would you use? You said you got that in the Dominican Republic, right?
Yes.
What would you use if you didn't have that?
You could go to pretty much any chocolate, any local chocolate. Yeah, any chocolate. Not that I'm extra, but because we're talking about something that is a natural plant, I like to keep things on that. So that's why I'm going with organic chocolate, organic cannabis. So trying to keep everything kind of like in that organic theme.
And so you had to heat up the oil to dissolve the CBD distillate, or you didn't have to heat it?
Yeah, I actually did warm it up a little bit because obviously, honey is thick and it gets thicker at the temperature as it sits. So I wanted to at least make it easier for me to pour it into this container. And even now, I know that I may need to warm it up a little bit just so that it comes out smoother, but I think it'll be just fine.
I noticed when I buy honey that as it ages, and it gets closer to the bottom, it gets very thick.
Yes.
So I want it in the microwave. Does that change if you had it?
I don't think it changes it. However, I try to stay away from the microwave as much as possible. Sometimes it's just better to just stick it in a double boiler, or even just put it in a pan with hot water and kind of like allow it to slowly solidify.
That was the first thing I used when I started, was the honey. I really liked it.
Okay. Yes.
Do you decarb this isolate before you use it in your product?
Well, it's already decarb. So for me, I'm actually ordering this product from Michigan from a company that is producing its own hemp products. So they're already decarboxylating, it's already decarb, both in the isolate and in the distillate. So just kind of like just letting this just get to melt down. Is that too hot?
No, I'm good.
I don't want your hair to frizz up.
No.
I don't see
It's heating.
Oh yeah.
It's working.
Well, I know it's working, I just don't see it. Oh.
I'm going to turn this down a little bit low because we don't want the chocolate to get scorched. Please shoot any questions that you might have, even those in the back, on the side. This is interactive.
Well, I'm really glad I came tonight. I haven't been feeling too well and really didn't feel too good today, and I really had to push myself. So
Thanks for coming.
thanks for giving me that little nudge. It's, when you know you're supposed to do something or be somewhere, and
It helps you.
Yeah.
How did you infuse the oil, the coconut oil? How did you do that?
Now the coconut oil, I actually infused that with the distillate because now that's oil and oil mixing together. So there was really no separation. So that's why I actually used the oil with the coconut oil. However, when I did this, isolate was not on the radar. So now that isolate is on the radar, I think I'm going to start converting more to the isolate, but I still use the distillate for certain things. It's kind of like a trial and error, playing with what works, what doesn't work. So it's still very new to me with working with it, but it's very easy to work with. With working with the oils, and anyone that is a cultivator or that has handled cannabis, it is very sticky. It can be very messy, and it can even be more messy when you start working with the actual oils from the actual cannabis plant. You have to use almost like a flammable solution, acetone, to almost try to help remove it from silverware, from plates and glasses. Yeah, so I mean, it's messy stuff. It will come out, but if it gets in your clothes, you pretty much can forget it.
You can actually use 90% isopropyl alcohol and heat it up.
Absolutely.
Boom.
What is your facility, Harmless Health? Is it a
Harmless Health?
restaurant?
It's not a restaurant, it's a test kitchen.
Oh, okay.
And because of the laws, and each state, I'm in Rhode Island, and you know, each state has its own laws. And here in New England, we're crossing state lines so much that have to be aware of what's allowed from Massachusetts to Rhode Island to Connecticut, from Maine to Vermont to New Hampshire. And it really starts to become complicated. So it would definitely be helpful for the federal government to step up and actually to just do a regulation that would be across the board. But until we reach that point, we're working with CBD in the state of Connecticut, because not everyone that's present is a patient.
You know, there was just a show on television that was very interesting. It was about a little boy and his mother. I can't remember, Wayne, what he had. Do you? What his sickness was, I can't remember. But nothing worked. And so she started giving him the CBC oil or CBD? Okay. And the state took the kid away from her, said she was an unfit mother and all this. And the outcome came out good, but she went through a lot.
I think he had some form of genetic skin condition.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember either,
About
but
10 years old.
Yeah. Well, it's about time we see some changes on the federal level, you know.
Absolutely.
It's about time.
So what I'm actually going to do now is I'm actually going to incorporate 1/4 cup of the coconut oil. And even though I said that it is infused with CBD, it's actually not. Because what happened is I actually used the rest, and then I ended up leaving a tag on it of being CBD, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't infused. And also, too, I wanted to make sure that my math was correct on what the final product is going to be. Because now, if this was infused with CBD, then we would now have to recalculate what the dosage is, if that makes sense to folks.
Dr. Pecher, what you're proposing for the area here, will you be having a test kitchen also, or is it just a doctor facility and a cannabis
No,
facility?
this is definitely part of our projection.
Good.
This is
Yeah.
part of where the future is. Not only the restaurant industry, but we are what we eat. And, you know, our health is directly correlated to what we're eating, so organic and clean. And
That's great. I'm
Yeah.
really happy for you.
we have big plans.
That's part of like what Ibn said about the ingredients themselves. I think sometimes, like, you know, he said he called himself extra, but it really does matter. Sourcing matters. So if you can get local fresh ingredients, that's important. Like she said, we are what we eat. So like eating the rainbow, making sure it's infused with local products, quality medicine, keeping it simple. It's really not that difficult. It's really just a matter of the quality of the product that you're using.
No, what is your name?
Ibn Bakari?
E-B-I-N?
Nope, IBN.
I-B-N?
Mm-hmm.
And you pronounce it Eben?
Yes. And Bakari.
Oh, B-A-K.
Ari.
And you pronounce that Bakar?
Bakari. So now what I'm going to do is, to speed up the process, I actually purchased some pre-molded chocolate cups. Most folks have used these for alcoholic desserts. That's what it actually have been promoted as. In fact, if I was even to pull out the box, it would even show you that Jello shots, this, that, and the other. So yeah. So
They're great with amaretto. I'm just saying.
yeah. Now I have to admit, I did actually use an infused honey, not an infused honey, an alcohol infused honey to the honey.
Oh, you did?
Yes, there's a company. It's called Behringer's, and it is basically distilled. The alcohol is distilled out of the honeycomb, and then you get an alcoholic honey liquor. So I found that it is great, with when I make my lemonades, and now I'm using it with the honey. So if there's anyone that is allergic to alcohol, then I apologize.
Well, there's two ways of being allergic. One is you get drunk.
I promise you,
The other is you
it's
break out.
very, 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 very minimal. Very minimal. Very minimal. I already pre-cut these cherries, so I am going to go ahead and start plopping them inside the molds. Instead of wasting, I'm going to make all of them. I'm sure we're going to have some more folks, and I'm sure some folks are going to say they want more.
When I was a little girl, I used to save the cherry to last.
Oh, I got it. Don't worry. Yeah, well,
Now, I do have one question that I'm going to ask in general, and if someone could answer it. I am finding that when you combine CBD and THC together, that the CBD actually kind of helps with, I don't know, cutting the THC effect, if you will. I don't know if anyone has seen that or experienced that. And the only reason why I mention it is because we hosted an event last Friday, and we incorporated CBD cocktails in the 6-course dinner that our guests had. And for the 150 milligrams that the guests ingested, along with about 50 to 75 milligrams of CBD, everyone left the facility perfectly fine. The very next day, everyone said that they had a great night's sleep. They were energetic. One gentleman said that he even had a better basketball game than the other weeks that he normally plays. So I'm kind of asking, have you found or have you heard of anything that may have that justifies that or that
Yeah,
explains
so I think what you're talking about is just whole plant therapy,
Mhm.
and it's the best form of treatment in my opinion. We have different receptors in the brain, CB1 and CB2 receptors. So THC and CBD attach to different receptors,
Yes.
so therefore they have different effects in the body. And we combine that, just like when we combine other things that work well in the body, it's a better effect. So what we find is when we do microdosing or smaller dosages
Yep.
of different cannabinoids, we tend to have a better effect. You can't overdose from cannabis, but when we put too much of the one cannabinoid into the body, those receptors can get bound up. So it's nice to have whole plant therapy where we can combine different forms, because each plant has different DNA. So when we can combine different forms of different cannabinoids, we tend to get the best effect. And sometimes, even though there's a belief that CBD doesn't cause any type of head high, that's actually incorrect. It does, it's just a different form, a different psychotropic effect. In some patients, it doesn't cause sort of any euphoric effect like THC will cause, but it could cause maybe an anxiety or something like that. So when we combine it with a THC, perhaps an indica dominant THC, it tends to, like Ibn said, combat that and just have a more holistic effect, a general overall well-being effect. But the CBD is better for like inflammatory conditions, so that's probably why it helped your friend.
Yep.
Where the THC is better for pain and relaxation and just, mental decompression and things like that. So whole plant therapy is always the way to go.
And it also made me kind of think back as to, like, I'm looking at the flower chart at the dispensary, and when you get to your CBD plants, like say ACDC is a CBD flower, and it may say like 11% THC and maybe 8% CBD. So they say it's almost like a 1-to-1 ratio. So that makes me think back to that as to like, okay, it kind of helps balance it out.
Yeah, so what started happening in breeding and genetics of cannabis is folks started breeding CBD plants. We're not talking hemp CBD and cannabis CBD are two different things. But what happens with the cannabis plants is they started breeding them to have no THC in them. And the reason that a lot of folks did that was, one, the legislature was designed for CBD only, like in Florida, so they wanted to make sure folks had access to CBD only plants. Or two, CBD ends up being what I call a good gateway medicine to other forms of cannabis. So a lot of time when we can just introduce what's a lot of folks think is more innocent form of the cannabinoid than the THC, folks will get comfortable with that, start to realize the side effects of cannabis are actually pleasurable, and then we can start to build off of that by introducing other forms of cannabis. So now we're starting to see these 1-to-1 ratios, 2-to-1 ratios, and things like that in plants because, again, that's what works best.
So Ibn, what are you doing now?
Basically, what I'm doing is I'm filling up the molds with the honey as well as with the cherries. Pretty much done. Just trying to just fill them in so that I give myself enough space.
Looks nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're going to be good.
I'm just looking for a napkin. So now the hard part, placing this chocolate.
That would probably be easier with one of those cake things.
I thought about bringing it, but then I just said it's going to be too much.
Is there a measuring cup? Because it might be easier.
Unfortunately, I don't have the measuring cup with.
Does Mike have one?
Yeah, you know what? I brought my spoon.
You got this.
Yeah, I got it. Now my only problem is that I have to let this chocolate cool down a little bit because it will melt the top of this, and then we will have a disaster. So I'm going to allow this to cool for a little bit, and we'll continue to kind of do some some Q&A.
Good.
Oh, that's why you said that.
Ibn, how did you get into all this? What led you to this field in general?
Well, two things happened. One, I received a phone call from out west, California, from one of my college teammates, and he had recently he was forced to retire because of a medical condition from the NBA, and he had mentioned to me that he was interested in trying to acquire a medical marijuana dispensary here in the state of Rhode Island to kind of basically help with his wellness vision that he was starting to develop out in California. So he asked me, who's the most powerful person in the state of Rhode Island? And I said, well, that all depends on what is it that you're trying to accomplish. So he then told me what he was looking to try to do. I already knew who the players were that were involved, and I told him that the two folks that you have working for you right now are the best two individuals to help you to acquire this. And he was like, well, would you be interested in getting involved? Bless you. And I said that, well, let me look into it. Let me think about it, because My profession is that I am a state inspector for the Department of Transportation. So the last thing I wanted to do was to do anything that was going to sabotage or, put me under the radar for my employer, because we have very strict drug laws, with our employers, which I've been trying to advocate for them to change the laws since we are now a medical marijuana state. Then my mother, who has MS, she also was a part of the reason why I got into this industry. Reason being is that I've watched her go through a lot of the different trial medications that the pharmaceutical company was giving to her doctor, to her neurologist. And I saw the fluctuation with the steroids, with her blowing up and then going down, blowing up and going down, the mood swings, the depression and everything that was going on. So, I ended up having a heart-to-heart conversation with her and asking her, like, hey, Ma, have you thought about, cannabis? And she was like, oh, no, I would never do that. And I'm like, okay. But would you possibly open to it? And she was like, well, talk to me. Tell me what you're talking about. And so I said, well, there are different methods in medicating with cannabis other than just smoking. And she was like, oh, like what? And I was like, do you like lollipops? She was like, who doesn't like a lollipop? I was like, you like chocolate? She was like, who doesn't like chocolate? I was like, do you like popcorn? You're trying to tell me that they have medicated popcorn? And I'm like, Ma, anything can be medicated with cannabis.
You're like, Mom, I am they.
So, a long story short, that is how I end up getting into the industry. And I actually saw the writing on the wall that edibles was really going to be Pandora's box with cannabis, because everybody just has that negative stigmatism about cannabis that has been instilled in our brains, in our minds. Our parents told us, oh, cannabis is a bad drug, it's a gateway drug. And this is something that has been repetitive throughout my childhood up until my adult life, maybe up until 10 years ago. So it's, to me, I just feel that this has been a blessing in disguise. This is something that I'm interested in. It's something that I have a lot of passion for. I love being in front of folks speaking about it. I love the debates. I love to be challenged in questioning. If I don't know, I'm not going to try to make up anything. I try to tell you what I know, and then we have a dialogue. And so I actually credit all of you today for coming out today, for being open-minded to this and actually thinking about wanting to take control of your own health.
See, I've been very hesitant with what I'm using because I don't know anything about it. Thank you. And coming here every month is a little frustrating. So having something to look at tonight and see the results, I think is great. I really like that because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't smoke. I can't smoke, so I don't smoke it. I use the sublingual strips. I've used the honey. Okay. And I've used some of the, almost looks like a...
Capsules?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say like a mega capsule, it looks like. But I've stuck to the sublingual strips. They seem to work really good. But I'd like to expand on that. I need something for pain. I need something for energy. Kind of conquered the sleep, so that's good. So I thank you.
No, thank you. Now, I will say this, and I know I'm gonna be on record, but you know what? It's okay. I did dabble with a little bit of cannabis when I was in college. Who didn't? I went to URI. Actually, our slogan was, "You are high." So, so with that being said, I, just like anyone that has experienced cannabis, dabble with it in their life, majority of everyone said the same thing. It was seedy, it was twiggy, it was paranoia, it was all of that. And now that I know what we're talking about, I'm like, oh, so we were smoking sativas back then. Because that is what sativa does. It's energy. So when you're looking for something for energy, if you're looking for something for daytime use, sativa is going to be the strain that you want to go with. I actually like to tell folks that when you start looking at cannabis and you're going to go into this, you should start almost dead middle at a 50-50, meaning 50% sativa, 50% indica, to see how you're going to balance it. Then you go over to a 60-40 on the sativa side to see how well you handle. If it doesn't make you paranoid, then that's great. Then you may take a step over to a 70-30. If you feel that paranoia come in, then you backtrack back down to a 60-40, and now you know, like, all right, 70-30 dominant on the sativa side is going to increase my anxiety or paranoia, so let me go to my comfort zone. Then you go on the flip side to indica, where now you have your 40-60s, you have your 30-70s, and then the further that you go up, the more likely you're going to be stuck in a couch, stuck in a chair, or stuck in a bed. That's why we associate sativa with daytime, indica with nighttime use. But I'm assuming that you guys already knew that.
No, don't assume.
So what was daytime?
Daytime is sativa.
So an easy way actually to remember that is just to use the letters that it starts with. So sativa starts with S, so think of soaring, energetic, cerebral, daytime, medicine. Exactly, sunshine, any of those acronyms. Indica is the opposite, starts with IN, so I think in the couch, relaxation, nighttime sedation, pain relief, those kind of things.
So if I were to use it during the day, I would take just the sativa,
Yes.
sativa.
Dominant, more dominant.
Yes,
No.
and now mind you, some folks have the opposite effect, so it really is trial and error at the beginning of kind of finding out what works best for your body.
Okay.
So generally speaking, like you said, you want to try a nice hybrid or cross of both sativa and indica, and that's a nice blend for a lot of people. But if you we have patients that have, say, wasting syndrome or going through cancer treatment, have a really hard time getting out of bed, so a more dominant sativa or pure sativa might help lift them and help get them, sort of out of their own way and stop focusing on the pain and things like that, where the indica is generally more of a nighttime medicine or pain relieving medicine or relaxation medicine and things like that. And if you have any questions, just so you know, I work with, Dr. Pecher.
Oh, okay.
So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me.
Oh, I would love that, yeah.
Take a look at the menu.
It's very frustrating not having somebody that can give you advice,
Yeah, I understand.
and you have to figure it out for yourself.
And that's something that we'll work to advocate for patients,
Right.
moving forward, is that, like in Massachusetts, you can't make any recommendations at all. There's a lot of missing links or miseducation going around. So that's why we have the support group monthly, and just want you to know there are resources out there. So.
Thank you.
Get your name.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Oh, that looks good.
You know that song in The Lion King, like, can you feel the love tonight? I think you did this before, Ibn.
Oh, I've done it. I'm freehanding. Yeah.
Pretty good there. Not even a drop.
My hand would be like,
No.
Well, I had some sativa before we started, so I needed to get motivated because I don't really care for rainy days and mess with my mood.
oh, it's a crummy day today.
Just will be a little bit on camera.
And this is a fancy way to introduce treats, but we can always keep it simple and just infuse the chocolate, pour that into a mold, and that's just as effective, especially sublingually or under the tongue when you introduce it that way. It tends to have a quicker effect when you.
I always told everybody I never had any high effect from taking the two products, because I take it when I go to bed at night. But one night I took it early. Oh, that was a big mistake. I couldn't even get up the stairs. I'm like, oh my god, I feel this.
Felt good, right?
I went to bed.
How did you sleep?
Pretty good.
That really looks fabulous.
I've had my one experience with being prescribed Oxycontin from almost a possible carjacking.
Oh, God.
Person tried to carjack me with a knife. I'm like, who carjacks with a knife? So of course I grabbed the knife and I hit the gas and I almost lost 2 of my fingers.
Ouch. Better than losing your life, I think.
Hey, and ironically, the Attorney General called me and was like, Ibn, I just heard what happened. He was like, who was it? I was like, I didn't stick around to find out. And he was like, but wait a minute. Didn't I give you a license to carry in any situation? I was like, Patrick, the gun was in the back.
Where it's supposed to be?
W-
Will you make me keep it?
Exactly. So I was following protocol. I had 2 beers. I didn't want anybody to question my judgment if I did pull that out.
Patrick, if you're listening, you've taken our rights away to have guns, cannabis cards, so now we can't protect ourselves in random situations like this. So thanks, buddy. Appreciate that.
So I say that to say that I'm on the medication, and I just didn't like how it made me feel at all. In fact, I even found myself it was a Sunday before Rhode Island passed a law for sale of alcohol. So my only 2 choices was Massachusetts or New Hampshire. I get on the road and I drive to New Hampshire with a buggy, and I just bought any and everything in the place, and then I put it in the car and I drove back to Rhode Island. The next day when I woke up and I went out into the car, I'm like, where the hell all this alcohol come from? And I said that, you know what, I will never, ever, ever take that drug again.
And that was Percocet, right?
Yes.
I can't take that either. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're-
learn, right?
We're not
Yeah,
fans
live and
of
learn.
opiates either. We've never prescribed them here.
I have a very,
You hear that? A doctor that's never prescribed opiates.
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
Because let's not act like there's not a place for them. There's no place to be.
Not for
abusing
chronic.
them. No good for long term. Do you want to mention the show? By the way, you're live on Facebook. Do you want to mention the show for tomorrow?
Oh yes, please join us tomorrow for our filming of High Stakes. I believe, isn't it episode number 10?
I think we did it.
Yes.
Where's it at?
It's at the Groton TV station, SEC TV, and we film there every other week.
I'll
It's
post-
a different
I'll post
show.
the link
It's
on
a
YouTube
show
as
about
well.
the opiate crisis and
So-
holistic strategies.
It's called High Stakes, and it's basically a holistic look at curbing the opioid epidemic. We talk about how medical cannabis, helps as well.
Now, Melissa had mentioned one thing, and that's the reason why I actually brought a mold.
Oh, very
I brought
nice.
an extra mold to incorporate the rest of this chocolate so that it doesn't go to waste. So I'm going to just go ahead and just pour these in the mold, and we will.
It's a great idea.
Waste not, want not.
That's right.
There's a couple of sayings we use in the cannabis world. Waste not, want not. Keep it simple, stupid. More roots, more fruits. So.
What would happen if one licked the bowl?
Well,
Reminded me of you.
I can only tell you that I have probably knocked myself out, I don't know, 20, 30 times in the last 8 years.
Someone on
I'm my own guinea pig.
Someone on my live just said dibs on licking the bowl. Let me just tell you, I made some edibles on 420 and I licked the bowl. It wasn't a good idea.
It was not a good idea.
Yeah, I spent my 420s.
Yes, that's the reason why you didn't make it.
Exactly. I texted you. Though.
Yes, you did.
Also, I was having car trouble. And
Oh, no.
I don't know if you saw that. So it didn't make much sense to.
To venture out.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, goodness. Very nice and neat, Ibn. Look at you.
I'm a little anal,
Not messy at all.
just a little.
What's those little things there? Yeah, they do.
These here?
Yeah.
Yes, those are eyeballs. I was gonna kind of like, you're gonna look at your chocolate. I figure why not let your chocolate look at you?
What you looking at?
Oh yeah. Man, they're getting close.
I got eyes on you.
And thank you for pointing the eyes out. They were here for a purpose. Now, don't be mad if they're cross-eyed or upside down.
At the bottom of the tree.
They're like, what you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
When you make those, they should have the dot on both the top and the bottom, so you drop it in anyway.
Funny.
So do you want to recap
Have you ever
the
made
recipe?
any pain medication that you rub on the spot? That's-
Uh-oh. I'm sorry.
Have
Do
you?
you want to recap the recipe?
So recapping the recipe, we made some infused chocolates with infused localized honey in a chocolate cup with coconut oil and cherries, right?
Yeah.
Is that 1, 2, 3? Okay. And we used a CBD isolate to incorporate into the honey. We've already have kind of done the math, and we know that each of these cups are about 30 milligrams of CBD, not THC. State of Connecticut.
Do you, at your facility, do you have lessons for people, or are you testing for businesses?
I am,
Dispensaries or whatever.
well, I actually started off as, similar to Melissa, started off the kitchen for one of the dispensaries in Rhode Island. My test kitchen that I established was more so to keep me in practice so that I can do events like this and know what the hell I'm talking about.
And we're actually talking about doing some cooking classes and things like that. We like to do the support groups that are just open to the public, but we understand that there's a demand for more specialized, infused cooking classes, so it's something that we've been talking
Yeah,
about a little bit.
I'd be interested in something that you can put on the pain. I have
Like a
metal
topical?
plate. Yeah, like I have metal plates in my back and they can't do it anymore. Surgery.
Like, see in the back, I actually have a little display of some of the CBD products that I carry. And 2 of the products that I have, one is a lotion and one is also an icy mist spray that you can apply to your body.
And as you mentioned, you only take your medicine in the evening.
That's for sleep, yeah.
Right,
I
so
haven't
the
taken
beauty-
anything during the day yet.
The beauty of a topical is that it cannot break through the blood-brain barrier. Well, it could if you put some certain ingredients in it, but the way it's made, it cannot break through, meaning it can actually not get you high at all. So you can feel confident in putting that on before you leave the house and in driving and
Daytime.
things like that.
Okay.
Daytime use.
But the cooking classes is something that I am going to start considering and thinking about. It's just that right now I just have myself so busy with so many different projects. I'm currently working with a production company out of Boston to do a cooking series called Bistro 420. We've already have shot the demo, and we're just waiting for the funding to do the complete shoot so that we can introduce that from the East Coast perspective, not Hollywood perspective. Obviously, here in the Northeast, we're a little bit different than the rest of the country. But also I feel that the Northeast is pretty much kind of like the heartbeat of the United States, because this is where pretty much the original settlers started. So we have a lot of old ways, a lot of old traditions that are here. So I look at, we're looking to try to capitalize on appealing to the liberals that are within the Northeast corridor.
You might want to consider the Vice Channel, like Discovery.
I'm sorry?
You
Ice Channel, which is owned by Discovery.
Yeah,
Station? Yeah, I'll write it down.
More questions?
So,
Uh-oh. Muscle talk. All right, let me stick you guys in for this last run.
So the cooking classes that you're mentioning, are they going to be held in Connecticut or Rhode Island?
Well,
It says it's based out of Rhode Island.
that is something that we will have to look into, and exactly, yes. You know, as you start, you know, as you ask that question again, because of the laws, the rules, and the regulations, you have to kind of figure out, like, okay, where's the gray area that you can step in that's comfortable enough that it's not pissing off the powers that be.
So if you live in Connecticut and you are given these lessons or whatever, cooking classes in Rhode Island, is it against the law for?
I would say that the law would be the same for Rhode Island as it is for Connecticut because of it's medicinal, not rec. So with Massachusetts, as long as you were 21 years of age, then it would be no issues. But here, everyone needs to either be a medical marijuana card holder, you know, there's a lot of just different things that you need to make sure that's in place.
I think part of our plan will be to do it in both states. But what we'll do, well, all three states ultimately, but we'll Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a little looser laws, but what we can do here is we'll still teach you how to infuse it. We just won't do it with actually infuse.
or we can work with CBD and it not be THC.
Yeah. So, but it'll be a little bit more in depth in those instances. We'll actually teach you how to infuse the coconut oil or how to infuse the honey, how to make the lollipop. You know, it'll be different. You know, we'll ask you what you want to learn and sign folks up for those specific classes.
very excited.
Yeah.
Look at her.
We're trying, like you said, just things coming, you know, we're putting them in motion, so it's coming soon.
Ooh.
And the classes will be not just baking, but cooking as well. So we'll teach you how to make different sauces and things like that.
Are you still filming?
Yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay. I did want to emphasize on, I'm sorry? What's that? I'm sorry, I can't. I'm sorry. Huh? What? Yeah, please. Can I need it. All right, yeah, here we go. Hello? Hello? One of the two things that I would say that is probably the most important things in the kitchen that you need to have. Sure. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. One of the most important things that I would say that you need to have in your kitchen is one is a calculator, so that you can actually, you know, like, first of all, you need to have your product tested. So you need to know what your product is. So if you know that, okay, if you purchase, you know, the honey and you know that the honey is like at 1,500 milligrams, then okay, you know, like, all right, first number is going to be 1,500 milligrams. If you plan to end up using the entire whole product, then now you know that you would start doing your divisions. So calculator is always a priority to have in the kitchen. The second is going to be the syringe. Not a needle, but a syringe, because this is a measuring tool. This is a 1 ml measuring device that we are now using in the industry. A lot of people see it, they're thinking like, oh my God, Ibn, it was like, what, they're shooting it up now? And I was like, no, you're not shooting it up. This is just simply to be able to measure the doses correctly. You try to do things by eye, you can be off. So that's why I say that these are the two important tools that you want to have along with your other tools in
And
the
a double
kitchen.
boiler.
Well, if you have a stove, then you don't need it.
Well, yeah, but sometimes it melts better, a double boiler, because it's got the water in it. than on a direct-
absolutely.
on a direct burner.
This is true.
Without
They
being
actually have
extra
the
careful.
ones, the induction oven,
Yes.
the one that I like, this that goes on the top of the countertop.
Yep.
And you can actually set it for an exact temperature. And so it's kind of a set it and forget it. And they
Okay.
have
So
like
it's something,
non-stick
something like
pans.
this, you mean?
It's like that, except it's a flat surface.
Okay.
Kind of like what an electric stove would be.
Almost kind of like similar to
Similar
what's
to
back
that
here in the
over
back.
there.
I was telling
Absolutely.
you, you need a
Yes.
special pen.
And you
for
can
that.
Yes.
you can set it to an exact temperature, so it's great to infuse butters. It's just great to do a
It's
lot of
helpful,
different.
especially where you need this
And
exact
it's like
temperature.
$100. It's well worth its weight once you get going. Another helpful hint I think too is to practice your recipes ahead of time. So like if you were making those chocolates, right, and you had a certain mold, don't infuse it. Use the, if you're gonna use a cup or 2 cups of chocolate, pour it without it being infused. See how many of those candies or chocolates you get, and then know that that's how you use
Exactly.
that calculator to divide your math in, because you don't want to waste that medicine and be like, oh my gosh, they're too strong or not.
Yep.
And the other good thing is when you use why I think we go to a simple thing like chocolate in the beginning to use as a teaching tool is you can always melt that back down as long as you don't
Absolutely.
get it to too high of a temperature. So then you can sort of dilute it or add more medicine if it wasn't strong enough or something like that.
That's what I was gonna ask about the measurements between the ingredients. How do you know about, like you said, you're testing it?
So you have tested medicine, that's first, so you know what the dosage is and you figure out that math. And then you create a recipe and you test that recipe and you see how many products. But you if you're making it, say you're making cookies, right?
Yeah.
If you had 1,000 milligrams, or say you had 500 milligrams and you wanted each cookie to be 50 milligrams, right? You just do simple math, so you're making 10, right?
Yeah.
And so if the recipe calls for 12, you would just break it down to that 10. Another way is to use a measuring device or a mold, or if like when we start doing sauces and things like that, I like to use an ice cube tray, and I'll pour it into the ice cube tray, and then I use that as a a measuring device. I freeze those, and then it depends, like what's my dosage. Each cube might be 20 mgs, and depending on how I'm feeling, I can cook a regular meal, and then I can just add that either 20 or 40 mg dose into my meal for the evening.
It's funny how the doctors, no offense, think nothing of giving us medication that just screws up our whole bodies and makes you sick. You mention this, and you get a snide remark. And it's like,
I'm sorry?
something's got to be better than the medicine I'm taking, because the medicine's making me really sick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very sick.
That's why
Yeah.
we're proponents,
So he was mentioning that. Go ahead. You were saying cannabis doesn't taste good to you.
Pardon the blatantness of this, cannabis tastes like crap. So how do you keep that crappy flavor from infiltrating into the things that you're making?
Well, that's now going to what I was discussing about distillates and isolates, where now you're basically removing the oil and you're actually grabbing the triclones, you're grabbing the terpenes. That's where the medicine is. And so now, and so with the distillate and also with the isolate, it's pretty much tasteless. So we've now eliminated that cannabis taste. When I first started, absolutely, you were going to taste cannabis because I was working with the whole plant and doing the extraction, had the green color, so my coconut oil was green. You'll see your green butters, you'll see all of that. That's when you know that the person actually used the actual whole plant when they did that extraction. But when you start seeing that the butter is just yellow, clear, just look like regular butter, now you know that that's the isolate, the distillates that were being used. And now you're now you're just tasting butter.
Yeah, it's not.
No flavor to the oil.
No.
Correct. It's not the actual cannabis that so much tastes like crap. It's the plant material that breaks off the chlorophyll. Just the material itself. The plant breaks down as you're infusing it into the butter, and that's what makes it green. But when you cook with an oil concentrate form of it, or a distillate form, or a powder form, you tend to not get that. When it's extracted through a process like CO2 extraction or BHO extraction, you're just taking the oil or the medicine off the plant, and you're leaving the remainder of the plant material behind. So in that term, it actually starts to taste good because you have the terpenes that he talks about,
Yes.
which are the actual flavors of the plant.
So it's actually breaking it down.
Exactly. So if you were to look at the plant under a microscope, or when you look at a plant that's all shimmery and shiny and looks like it's glowing,
Look like a chandelier.
Those are called trichomes, right? And inside those trichomes, or those crystals, is where the cannabinoids are. That's the actual medicine of the plant. The rest is just housing it and like allowing it to grow. So when you strip those trichomes off of the plant, you create that oil or turn it into a powder form. That's the concentrated form of the actual medicine. That's what we vaporize. That's what we use to cook. How cute are those?
Very.
Aww. Can you hold one up?
Hold one up. Was it upside down? No, it was good.
And you need to definitely label, when you start making your things in the kitchen, label them, because you can potentially forget, and then you'll not know, and then you end up having an accident, and then be like, oh, how did that happen? And it was because you didn't mark your product that was infused. But that's how you know somebody went in somewhere they shouldn't have gone and didn't ask for permission. I was like, oh, you're gonna learn your lesson today. Now you're just gonna have to wait. They was like, how long? I don't know. How much did you eat? All of it. Oh boy. I was like, hey, listen, you thought you was going to Boston? You were heading to Washington, D.C. And it was like, no. You mean it's gonna be 7 hours? I was like, oh, so you are smart. So yeah, mark your products. Know it's there. I've had a hiccup here and there, and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot. What is the math on this? And I'm like, you know what? I don't have time to play with this. I put it to the side, and I'll start a new batch. Again, people are trusting you with their health when you're providing them a product. So it's my responsibility that I'm giving them what I'm telling them that they're getting. Which reminds me, I need to get insurance coverage. Just in case there's a lawsuit or something that comes.
Yeah, that's what stopped me from doing some of the process. But I think if we sign a disclaimer, we're okay.
Okay. Wait a minute, did we have anybody sign disclaimers before they came in here?
Be careful what you wear.
Yeah.
You ever get in the car and end up somewhere where you didn't plan
I am
to be?
also food safe certified, so that's why I try to stay as.
Ibn, look, so am I.
Oh, look at
Thought I was
you!
just a doctor.
Food services inspector.
Oh, lost the eyeball.
Uh-oh.
That's wonderful. How nice that is.
So we can start handing these out. So now, seeing that I just found out that the two are not going to fit in the package, what is going to be the simple math? What would be half of 60?
30.
So the package says 60, but there's only one item in there, so that is
Going in my belly.
another eyeball.
How am I eyeball?
They actually they started solidifying.
Yes.
Yep,
There's
another
an
eyeball.
Ibn-
Eyeballs are just rolling.
That one on this one.
Oh, did I?
Oh, that one went away too.
Yeah, some of them didn't stick down. It was for entertainment purposes.
Oops.
Oh my gosh, we don't eat sweets anymore.
It just popped. It just.
You were saying in the University of Rhode Island when I was a cheerleader, we used to have this cheer that went URI, URI, URINE.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Ah, so you attended URI?
No.
No?
No.
Then where'd you get the cheer from? Campus party?
We just, yeah.
Yeah,
cheerleaders,
something
yeah.
like that. Okay.
Save one for the.
I went to campus.
Yes. We got one, we'll do another one.
Do you have one?
No, here, thank you.
Is
I'll take one for Wayne.
we close?
Oh, you got one, okay.
Cameraman? Wait a minute,
Yeah,
wait a minute,
one
wait a
for
minute,
Spencer. He really
hey, wait a
needs
minute. No, we gotta make sure we take care of the camera.
Gotta take care of Spencer.
What was the temperature on the figure? Because it kind of froze up pretty quick.
They did?
Well, we haven't-
Well, no, I mean, he told me the lower the better, so
Yeah.
and it was quick.
Listen, wow.
Spencer, let's pass this one to you.
Wayne's brother-in-law has his own bees and he makes his own honey.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if he still does, so.
Somebody still.
Actually, we trying to get old when he does do it.
What is that?
They are good.
Oh, this was the chocolate.
Oh. These are the ones that you bought from the convention?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what you guys are having right now. All right. Anybody else?
Maybe Nikki's wants an extra one.
I'll take an extra one.
Yeah, take one for Nikki.
For upstairs?
No, for her husband.
Ah. But like, just eat it and shut up. Help me help you.
Well, I'm hoping it will help. He has ulcerative colitis, so.
Ah, okay. I've been hearing colitis come up more and more often.
Oh, that's a horrible thing.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Do they know what's like
Well-
causing it or
Well,
what's
we-
bringing it on?
Medications cause it.
Medications?
Yes.
Probably what's on the foods and
Yes.
what we're
Yeah.
being exposed
Yeah.
to and environment.
Oh, and
Oh,
I have more.
yeah, do you
I
want
have-
me to do, should we do it at closing? or-
No, we'll
Yes.
for those menus.
All right, so, any parting thoughts, Ibn?
Parting thoughts. I am always asked by my doctor or a doctor's assistant, are you allergic to any medications or anything? And I say, I am only allergic to one thing. And they was like, what's that? Bullshit. Those are my closing comments. Good night.
Well, then we.
No.
And it's a good fit, it's a good fit if we're also allergic to that.
But no, I really want to thank you guys for allowing me to come out and to, have some fun with you, converse.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to continue to keep this thing
Oh,
going.
we will. It was really excellent. Thank you for coming, Ibn.
Well, thank you for
Really
having
an
me.
honor.
And thank you all for coming out and braving this weather as well.
Wonderful.